Welcome back to Securities Regulation. We are at lecture 12, and in this part we'll be talking about the minimum offer to public, minimum subscription and underwriting. Now, when a company goes public, when a company is issuing shares for the first time to the public through an initial public offering, it needs to offer a minimum number of shares to the public. Now, this is not governed by the Securities Contract Regulation, by the ICDR. Instead, it is governed by a separate regulation called the Securities Contract Regulation Rules, which were brought in 1957. Under the SCRR, Securities Contract Regulation Rules, a company has to offer a minimum number of shares to the public. Now, what is this minimum number of shares? This minimum number of shares is calculated based on the post-issue paid-up share capital of the company. Now, think about this. A company may offer shares to the public either by way of a fresh issue of shares, in which case the company's paid-up share capital will increase, or by way of an offer for sale, where an existing shareholder of the company offers its own shares or offers the company shares to be sold or transferred to the public. This is known as an offer for sale. Fresh issue, offer for sale. In a fresh issue, the paid-up share capital of the company increases. In an offer for sale, the paid-up share capital of the company does not increase. Why? Because these shares that are being offered to the public through an initial public offering, they were already owned by an existing shareholder. Of course, we can have a combination of the two, where part of the offer to the public is by a fresh issue of shares, and part of the offer to public is by a pure offer for sale. Now, based on what is the paid up share capital of the company after the issue, we can either have if the post-issue paid-up share capital of the company is less than 1600 crores, then it will be 25% of the post-issue paid-up share capital of the company, or 400 crores. If the post-issue paid-up share capital of the company is between 1600 and 4000 crores, such number of shares that amounts to 400 crores. And if your paid up share capital after the issue is more than 4,000 crores, then 10% of your paid up share capital. In other words, 400 crores. But, so what we're seeing in all three examples is that your minimum offer to public must be for shares worth 400 crores at least. However, there is a caveat. After listing, any company that has less than 25% of its paid up share capital in the hands of the public must increase it to 25% within 3 years. So if you have a company which is very large and has a post-issue paid up capital of 4,000 crores, they've issued shares worth 400 crores only, they must take steps to increase or to sell more shares to the public such that their minimum public shareholding comes to 25%. Now, why 25%, you may ask? It's because that at 25%, the public may stop a special resolution. It's to do with control over the company. So if the promoters of the company, who are, let's say, holding 74.9% of the company, they will not be able to pass a special resolution. They will not be able to have full control over the company or change the very underlying structure of the company without some support from the public. Hence, SEBI mandates, and the Securities Contract Regulation Rules mandate, that at least 25% of the paid up share capital of the company must be in public hands. Now, this was about the amount of shares that are offered to the public. Now, remember, at the end of the day, no matter how complicated this gets, it's all to do with offer and acceptance for the sale of goods. Remember, shares are goods. So even if I've offered, let's say, 400 crores worth of shares to the public, we need to meet a minimum subscription level or a minimum level of acceptance, right? So the minimum offer to public, we know, is anywhere between 10% to 25% of the post-issue paid-up share capital. Now, the minimum public subscription or the minimum level of acceptance depends upon whether we are going under 6.1, Regulation 6.1, performance route, or the market route, which is 6.2, right? So, if the public subscription or the level of acceptance by the public, acceptance of this offer of shares, is less than 90%. So let's say I'm offering 400 crores worth of shares to the public. If the public level of acceptance is less than 90%, my IPO has failed. Additionally, under 6.2, if I'm going under 6.2, if qualified institutional buyers buy less than 75%, again, my offer fails, right? So let's go over that again. When does a public offer fail? In all circumstances, if the public subscription is less than 90% of the shares offered, offer fails. If I'm going under 6.2, the market route, if qualified institutional buyers buy less than 75% of my shares offered, again, the offer fails, right? So it depends upon whether I'm going under 6.1 or 6.2. If I'm going under 6.2, my offer can fail in one of two ways, either 90% overall public subscription or 75% QIB subscription. So now what happens when my offer has failed, or let's say my offer has met, let's say has not failed, but it's met, let's say 91%. What happens to that additional 9%? That is where underwriting kicks in. Now, what is underwriting? Underwriting has a long history. The word underwriting has a very, very long history. Essentially, it means a form of insurance. Now, underwriting started with Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's was a coffee shop where a number of wealthy merchants and ship owners would come and congregate. This was also a location where ship owners could chalk out deals and ventures. And at that point of time, we're talking about the 1600s, the 1700s, seafaring was a very, very expensive and a very risky enterprise. So in order to defray the risks and in order to defray the costs, wealthy ship owners would approach other merchants, other wealthy noblemen to underwrite or insure their voyage. So if something went wrong with the voyage, you could recuperate some of your costs from these underwriters. In other words, underwriting in the present sense is a process by which financial institutions take on the risk of the public offer. Underwriters, who are all financial institutions, they guarantee that the shares offered to the public will be sold at a minimum price. If they are not sold, then underwriters are required to purchase those unsold shares in their own name. Now, who do you think would be the underwriters to any public offering? Primarily, it is the merchant bankers who are working on that IPO. So, as we've discussed in previous tutorials, merchant bankers are responsible for the entire IPO process, including taking the company to the public capital markets, including making sure that all of those shares that are offered to the public are actually bought. In other words, if some shares are not bought by the public, if some shares are not accepted by the public, if part of the offer is not accepted by the public, the merchant bankers are under a statutory obligation under the merchant banking regulations. They are under a statutory obligation to make sure that they buy these shares in their own name. Oftentimes, what merchant bankers will do is that they will bring in other banks or other financial institutions to act as co-underwriters. In other words, what merchant banks will do is they will try to level out or defray the risk of underwriting, which means that if I have 100 shares which have gone unsold, instead of only me having to buy these 100 shares, I can share this underwriting obligation with other financial institutions with whom I have entered into a contract, an underwriting agreement, right? So we need to offer at least 400 crores worth of shares to the public in an initial public offering. Over time, I must increase these number of shares that are in public hands from 10% to 25%. When I'm offering shares to the public must accept at least 90% of my shares. Or if I'm going under Regulation 6.2, I must have qualified institutional buyers buying at least 75% of my shares. And if some shares are left unsold, underwriters, primarily merchant bankers, are required to buy these shares.